Hi, everyone. We're just going to give it a couple minutes. Let everybody join. Just going to give it a couple more minutes. We still see people joining.
It looks like we have slowed down on the people joining. So just wanted to give you that heads up. I will keep monitoring the waiting room.
Okay, great. Thank you. Guys, just give me a quick second. Okay, everyone. Hi, good morning. My name is Jackie Santiago. I am the LIHTC program analyst for the 9%. I use she, her pronouns. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chats, your name, your organization, and if you intend to apply for this year's 9% NOFA cycle. Just as a reminder to please keep yourself on mute when you're not speaking, and feel free to put any questions that you may have in the chat. We will be adding the recordings and the presentation and the PDFs afterwards on the website. Also, feel free to share any questions that you hope will be answered during this webinar. Okay, I'm going to get started. Okay, so here is today's agenda for the webinar. We're going to go through all of these different slides, go through the entire NOFA process and some key changes that were made this year to the NOFA. And we'll be taking questions along the way with also a bulk of time at the end to answer any questions as well. Right here, we have all of the contact information for the different funding sources, as well as the CDM. So you have my information at the top for LIHTC, Andrea for home, Edward for GAP, Martin for OHCCs, Dana for PSH, and Kevin for the CDM. Just as a reminder to send all NOFA related questions to the NOFA inbox, and they'll be answered, as well as the FAQs published onto the website. So here we have some important date reminders. The pre-applications are due on September 22nd, so that's coming up. Please make sure that you have the pre-app, the site review checklist, and the real estate schedule of holdings all sent by the 22nd. We'll then be releasing those pre-app stats between September 29th and October 6th. And the last day to submit your NOFA questions will be October 20th, with the full application being due October 27th. It's due at 4 p.m. The 4 p.m. is the complete cutoff, so just make sure that you are submitting on time and that you account for any potential errors that might happen along the way. So try to get it in as soon as you can. Scoring will take place between November 6th and January 5th, with Housing Stability Council recommendations February 2nd. And just as a reminder, these are they could be subject to change for the scoring. For the scoring and recommendation dates. Okay, so just a quick LIHTC program requirements. So some reminders that the affordability duration is 60 years, extended use. We have linked the income and rent limits. They are the 2023 MTSP limits. And we also have the development period schedule, so that way you have all the dates. Reservation will be by end of May 2024 with allocation of credits 2025 or later credits. Construction close is 300 days after the date of reservation. As a reminder, that 300 days changed last year. It was 240, but we did extend those days. The carryover application is due November 1st of 2025. We always send out reminders starting in September. And the carryover agreement will be due by December 31st, 2025, along with the 10% test. Placed in service date needs to be placed in service by December 31st, 2027. And the final application is due at least 60 days prior to desired issuance of 8609s. All underwriting requirements are integrated into the Excel NOFA application, so everything is already in there. Here we have the table for LIHTC program charges and fees. So the application fee is $3,500. The reservation fee charge is 9.5% of the annual allocation amount. Recipient charge is $2,500. We also have late carryover fees, $1,000 plus 200 per business day, plus 100 per hour for reevaluation. Late final application is $1,000 if received more than 6 months past placed in service date, plus $100 per month, plus $100 per hour for reevaluation. Monitoring charge first 15 years is $40 a unit, and after 15, it's $30 a unit. We have linked here the federal basis boost as well, so that you have easy access to that. And for those who need to know, the state basis boost eligible projects are rural projects, and it has the definition for rural there, as well as preservation projects, projects serving permanent supportive housing goals, projects cited as tribal lands, projects with at least 20% of the units restricted to LIHTC extremely low 30% rent and income limits, projects that are located in TODs as designated by local governments, projects that result in the deconcentration of poverty by locating low-income housing in low poverty areas, which are census tracts where 10% or less of the population lives below the poverty level. I know we get a lot of questions about basis boost. This is also outlined in the QAP. We have the developer fee calculation and the developer fee limits. You can also find this in the NOFA document. Like that, so everyone can see it. Before we get started on the NOFA process, was there any questions regarding what we covered so far? Just reading the chat.
Can you briefly go back to your slide on the developer fee? This is Shelley,
sure.
sorry.
Sure. There you go.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Alrighty, we're going to move on to the next part, which is the NOFA process. Pre-applications are downloadable from the OHCS website. We provided a link, but you can also find it directly at the website. The pre-application site review checklist and real estate schedule of holdings must be submitted together at the MF NOFA by the deadline. The deadline to submit those pre-applications are September 22nd. So it's coming up. In order to be eligible to submit a NOFA application, applicants must submit the pre-application site review checklist and the real estate schedule of holdings by the deadline. Site review checklist will be submitted as self-certified. Applicants will not be able to swap out project location. Sites must remain the same from pre-application to full NOFA application submission. Applicants may submit a pre-application and then decide without penalty not to submit a full NOFA application. If applying for multiple NOFAs, applicants must complete a new pre-application and applicable supplements as required. So the Procorum work centers will be created within 5 business days of OHCS's receipt of pre-application. if not on or before the deadline. If other persons of the development team are not on the pre-app and need access to the work center, please include them in the email body when submitting your pre-application. NOFA application, the full application and applicable supplements will be preloaded by OHCS for download into the work center. Completed tasks and events will be visible through the work center. You would submit the full application, supplemental documents, required evidence by uploading to appropriate folders. This is all in the work center. You'll see the checklist of instructions on the full tab of the NOFA application for guidance. If recommended for funding projects, work centers will continue to be used through the project's development lifecycle. So you'll continue to submit all your documents there through the entire cycle. Application will auto-populate the fields as you go through and will provide substantial self-scoring. The application's development was intended for completion from tabs left to right of the instructions tab. You want to be sure that you're paying attention to the initial instructions tab. There's a lot of information there, and it will guide you through the process of applying. Be sure to pay close attention to the color of the tabs in the cells. Review the red flags on the cells, as it may detail important notes. Do not use hyphens in any of the tax numbers. Leave fields blank that are not applicable to your project proposal. Do not attempt to change or modify any cells or formulas. There's a risk of application failure. And applicants may not copy an application to use with a different NOFA. Each application is specifically linked to a work center, so you do have to use the NOFA specific, the application specific to this NOFA. Each funding resources requires applicants to submit separate applications. By submitting an application, applicants are agreeing by electronic signature to all terms and conditions of the NOFA and application. Okay, are we good to continue? Is there any questions?
There are no updated questions in the chat.
Great. Okay, so we're moving on to the NOFA content overview. So we have some general NOFA details here. Applicants must request 9% LIHTC in this NOFA. There's a 60-point minimum to qualify, 70 points for preservation. The 70 points for preservation is a new change. Other funds are available. We have 15 million in home resources. Just want to make sure that we're noting that these resources are not available in home participating jurisdictions. There's a project minimum of 1 million, and it's available only to balance of state regions. We have gap resources totaling 5 million, 600,000 per project max on Metro PJ, 800,000 per project max on balance of state regions, which is an increase from last year. OHCCs at 6 million per project max. And for PSH, we only have a maximum of 30 units of both PSH rental assistance and operations subsidy available for the request total in this NOFA. So it's 30 units total. For LIHTC set-asides, we have the breakdown of how much will be offered per set-aside that you apply to. And so it's 65% for the regional pool, preservation's 25%, tribal lands is 10%. We also have some soft set-asides for nonprofits, 10%, and qualified culturally specific organizations are also at 10%. And just as a reminder, we have the reference pages for the NOFA on each slide so that you can take this and go directly to where it's referenced in the NOFA. For the culturally specific set aside, qualified culturally specific organizations and developers means an organization designed to serve historically underserved communities representing least likely to apply for hosting occupancy, and that is a representative of a community or significant segments of a community and provides affordable housing to low and very low income households. It can demonstrate primary target population served to be least likely to apply, meaning there's an identifiable presence of a specific demographic group in the housing market area, but members of that group are not likely to apply for housing without targeted outreach, including marketing materials in other languages for limited English proficient individuals and alternative formats for persons with disabilities. Reasons for not applying may include, but are not limited to, insufficient information about housing opportunities, language barriers, or transportation impediments. See a question here.
The question is, can projects request all 30 units of PSH, rent assistance, and operating subsidy? And if so, how will OHCS evaluate, allocate, or decide if multiple sponsors request this?
So for the PSH, everyone will be evaluated through their scoring. So those that are recommended for scoring will be the ones that are will receive those PSH units if they applied. So it really depends on how your scoring turns out, like which scores are the highest per the set asides that you're applying to.
And then we have a second question regarding the cultural specific set aside. What is the definition of identifiable presence? Like one person? I think we need to take that back to our FAQ group and get an answer for you and publish that later.
Yes. We'll be sure to answer that for you. Funding request limits, the 9% for the 9% projects, applicants may receive up to 20%, and no sponsor may receive more than 20% of the annual allocation of 9% in any 1 year. In 2023, 10% would be 1 million and 20% would be 2 million. So 2 million is the max. Yes, Shelley, all questions will be provided online with answers. Okay, so here it's just quick links to different program documents. I won't really go through those, but we just want to make sure that you have the ability to have a quick way to find the documents all related to the different funding sources as well as program requirements and policies. For the evaluation, there are a series of 3 reviews in the process of evaluating the 9% LIHTC NOFA full applications. This process assumes you've already submitted a satisfactory pre-application. First, we have the administrative review. We then have threshold review, followed by competitive scoring. And we're going to go through each of those review processes. Administrative review includes the review of the following materials, application and charge transmittal forms with payment for applicable charges. Those charges, payments should be postmarked by October 27th, which is when the application is due. Owner and board of directors authorization and acceptance form, the applicant's organizational documents, and we will also be doing a cursory administrative financial review. This is a new addition to the NOFA. We'll be reviewing the complete NOFA application with required exhibits, supplementals, and evidence, as well as the certification of pre-application submission confirmed with the creation of the work center. You'll be evaluated on a pass-fail criteria. The threshold requirements. Application must satisfy threshold requirements as of deadline to be considered for competitive scoring and funding recommendation. Items are also evaluated as a pass-fail. These documents include the diversity, equity, and inclusion agreement, relocation plan, ownership integrity, right of first refusal, resident services plan, and MWESB engagement.
Jackie, we have a question from the previous slide, which is, can you
Yes.
clarify what the cursory administrative financial review is intended to cover?
Yes, give me 1 second. Let me go back to that slide. Okay, so here we're going to just be taking a look over the financials just to ensure that there aren't any questions that we have, maybe something that's not adding up, and ensuring that we're able to ask those questions beforehand. It allows us to also review for any obvious issues that are potential input errors or true feasibility problems.
We also have a follow-up question is this financials relating to the property or the developer?
No, it's on the it's related to the pro forma.
Brent, does that answer your question? It's the pro forma, which is, I believe, the property.
Specific to the project.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jackie, hi, this is Shelley. Sorry. I just have a question. I mean, are you going to do you want us to wait for our questions, or if we have questions on a particular slide, should we ask that?
If you have questions to a particular slide, you're welcome to ask them. Becky will be letting me know if a question pops in.
Okay, so do you want them via the chat, or can we do it verbally?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
the chat would be good. Okay, we're just going to continue on with threshold requirements. This is regarding readiness to proceed. So we will have the zoning form, site control form, federal project resource status, development schedule, project site checklist, and the building permits timeline disclosure form. This is a new form to this NOFA cycle, and you will be able to see it in the work center. Threshold requirements continued. Also, we will be reviewing the core development requirements, development team capacity, program compliance review. Just as a reminder, threshold items are located in the NOFA. We have the page reference numbers. Okay. Was there any other questions to that section regarding the threshold requirements?
We have a question. If these forms were completed for LIFT applications earlier this year, do they have to be redone? The zoning and the building permit timelines.
All forms will need to be new for this NOFA.
Can you talk a little bit more about the DEI agreement?
Oh, hold on. Just stuff coming in.
Angela, about the DEI agreement, it is a for this particular NOFA, it is a document that you sign, and it's located in the Excel NOFA application workbook. Okay, and then we have Shelley Cullen. The timeline for submission of the application is about 60 days. In the past, OHCS has allowed for approximately 75 days. Those 15 days are very valuable as we work with nonprofit and culturally specific and responsive organizations, and they have to go through board approvals for MOUs. This timeline is very tight. Is that a question, or is that just, Shelley, do you have a question, or is that just a statement?
Well, I guess it's a little bit of both. I mean, I don't know if you would consider, taking a look at that and possibly giving us an extension. I don't know if other folks, have well, it looks like somebody else agrees with me. But it is pretty tight. So I guess I'm just asking, is this something you?
So these deadlines are firm for the October 27th application submission. We have a tight schedule that we need to meet in order to have these recommendations out in February.
Sorry, I got cut off briefly. So, I mean, I guess then the next question would be, and I can add this to the FAQs later, but if we're working with an organization, we have a draft MOU, we can provide you name and phone numbers of folks, but say they have to go to a board to approve it, are we going to get jeopardized and minus points because we don't have an official executed? Because so again, it's a pretty tight time frame for folks to go to board meetings to get MOUs approved. So, would you be looking at that as, our attempts to work with these organizations with our projects versus, not having a fully executed, but we have a draft, we have a name of a person, we have a phone number, we can tell you where we are in the process.
Yeah, I'll have to check in with our FAQ team. Can you type that up, Shelley, in the chat so that we can make sure that we answer that for you?
I'll send it through FAQs in an email. It'll be easier. So
yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you,
That
Shelley.
sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Looks like we're okay to move on. We're going to move on to the competitive scoring. We're going to start with new construction and acquisition rehab. So here we have the scoring breakdown. So it's going to show where the points are aligned. The biggest, the new change is under funding efficiency for home leverage. We'll go through that when we get there, but I just wanted to note it here that now home leverage is weighted at 4 points and there's no points to HTF leverage. But like I said, we'll go through that when we get there. But I just wanted you guys to see the breakdown of where the points are. Points in the state priorities category for permanent supportive housing, PSH, and family size units are mutually exclusive. PSH projects can elect to compete for family size unit points, but can't get points for both. So it's one or the other. Any projects requesting PSH operation subsidy or rental assistance must complete all PSH only questions and PSH service budget tabs. PSH points available to those who have already participated in the OHCS PSH Institute. So you must have already participated. It's not an intent to participate. Need severity score. So we're now on location related scoring. Need severity score will be auto-populated in the Excel NOFA application. Points, don't forget to include a revitalization plan. If you're pursuing QCT points, the opportunity and environmental factors are self-scored on the applicable tab in the Excel NOFA application. Make sure that site review checklist mirrors the responses in the self-scored tab. Inefficiencies will be calculated using a report generated by using the Environmental Justice Report instructions, which is downloadable through the Work Center. Vulnerable gentrification score will be auto-populated. Excuse me one second. I see a question coming in.
The question, can we please have a discussion regarding the new requirement of ROFR, right of first refusal? Has this been vetted with investors and lenders? Are they willing to sign a letter with this requirement? Also, are you requiring us to sell our properties to a nonprofit for below market at year 15 or year 60? Have you considered that it is, if required to sell at year 15, an RD project would need to go through a full Chapter 7 transfer, which means a recapitalization, and OHCS is not allowing projects to come back for more credits until after year 20. This is a bit confusing.
I think this
Jackie,
one I'm gonna. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. This is Angela Parada, the Senior Tax Credit Programs Manager. Just to respond, so it's not a new requirement. Instead, it's an articulation of a code requirement. And the right of first refusal only applies to projects that have nonprofit general partners. If there is not a nonprofit general partner in your partnership, the right of first refusal does not apply. Folks who are interested in reading more can visit section 42I7 in the code for more information.
And then we have a second question. The special needs target mentions several populations, but does not specifically identify PSH populations as defined by the 9% NOFA. Does this meet the target criteria? And then question 2, Section E funding efficiency looks at cost effectiveness and LIHTC effectiveness as it relates to number of bedrooms. Could OHCS please share how many bedrooms a studio would count for in this calculation as compared to a 1-bedroom, for example? Blair, I believe that for a studio, it is 0.75 of a bedroom.
I think it may be 0.5, but I'll get clarification.
Yeah, we'll follow up with that.
Yeah.
As far as the first question about the special needs target, but does not specifically identify PSH populations, does PSH, is that what you're asking, Blair? Does the PSH special populations meet the special needs target?
Yes, that's the question.
Thank you.
Yes, it does meet the definition. Okay. Any more questions?
Those are the ones we have had so far. I will continue to update.
Great. Alrighty. For partnerships scoring, a draft of the affirmative fair housing marketing plan is required. It's no longer optional. Applicants may submit an MOU or supporting document along with your AFHMP. Recall that affirmative fair housing is about addressing least likely to apply. Resident services plan is a threshold item and it is used to score this category. Recall that the resident services plan is about tailored services to residents. For federal preferences, serving lowest incomes, lowest average project AMI, completed in the Excel NOFA application, the project-based subsidy also would be completed in the NOFA application and additional documentation of voucher commitment. General federal subsidy, we have all the elements require documentation, so tenant ownership, energy efficiency beyond the CMD, and historic value, and the PHA waitlist marketing. And you want to make sure that that is, for instance, a commitment from PHA. So it would have to come from them.
Question, do the 9% percentage limits, no sponsor can obtain 20% of the total allocation in 1 year or no more than 30% in 2 subsequent years, still apply to sponsors that switched from a 4% to a 9% in last year's reshuffling of awards?
Yes,
They
I believe. Oh,
They
okay.
wouldn't.
So it will not.
Will not.
And then is that supposed to be the CDM re-energy efficiency? I believe that was on the previous screen.
Yes.
Yes, yes. Okay.
Sorry. Oh.
One more question. What should we do for affirmative fair housing marketing plans if property manager will be selected through RFP? We rely on their fair housing knowledge for these plans.
Rachel, I believe we'll have to get back to you on that one.
We will circle back with you. And for one more question so far, for project-based subsidy criteria and scoring, does a request for OHCS PSH operating subsidy rent assistance or Metro SHS subsidy count for these points?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
And that we have caught up.
Okay. Alrighty. For funding efficiency, this is where I mentioned the changes to home leverage. So home leverage of PJ or OHCS funds qualifies for these points. There is no HTF available in this NOFA, and all projects will receive a 0 score for this category. All 4 points instead are will go towards the home federal leverage. Last year, they were listed at 2.
I want to bring up that Trinity has clarified that a studio is 0.5% of a bedroom. Thank you.
Thank you, Trinity.
Another question, how will local leverage be evaluated?
Is this referring to PJ or for OHCS funds?
Travis, do you want to come off mute for a second and give us some clarification on your question?
Yep, sorry, was just trying to find the mute button. So my question here is if there is a significant other leverage besides OHCS, but it's not actually from the jurisdiction. So for example, OHA funds, will that count as points for leverage or how would that be evaluated?
So for this leverage, it's just related to home, either through PJ or OHCS's home.
Okay, because I think the NOFA had contemplated things like TIF or other local leverage. And so
Yeah.
I wasn't.
We'll be sure to clarify it in the FAQ. We'll make sure to provide you with additional clarification.
Okay. One more question about home, which is, can you explain the scoring tiers for home leverage, i.e. a project requests 2 million of home, how many points does that earn? And please confirm that projects requesting OHCS home in this NOFA will receive the points.
Just give me 1 second to read through the question.
You mind, Jackie?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I think realistically, asking for the home will get you the points. And we would definitely confirm that asking for OHCS home, you would get those points. Hence the minimum amount.
And clarification again, as they said earlier, PJ, if you are in a PJ that has their own home, you cannot request OHCS home in those locations.
Correct. But we'll receive the points for it.
It could be because you have them under PJ.
Right. Looks like
Okay.
no more questions. Okay. For project readiness, we'll be looking at financial viability, development pro forma review, the operating pro forma review, readiness to proceed, which is with confirmed funding, pending funding commitments, demonstrated ability to start within 12 months, reservation requirement to close within 300 days. As mentioned earlier, it was originally 240. We have extended it to 300. Project schedule with that is adequate and reasonable, and explanation of project funding required now. It is required now.
So Darren Murphy has a question. If the PJ's home round is later in the year, are there points for the intent to apply? And I think that you answered that with this question about the funding commitments have to be ready,
Confirmed.
confirmed.
Yeah, it would have to be confirmed. So no points for intending to apply. Okay, development team capacity. MWESB is to be completed in the Excel NOFA application. Development team experience should be documented in the narratives tab of the Excel NOFA application and completion of the supplemental in the work center. Performance is split into two categories. It's portfolio compliance and portfolio viability. Portfolio compliance includes the most recent REACT score, physical review, file review, resident services review, response review, and the most current year CCPC submission. Performance criteria is only applicable to applicants with projects in the OHCS portfolio. If an applicant doesn't have a project in OHCS portfolio, please submit a letter attesting to compliance and financial good standing. Okay. Any questions before we move on to competitive scoring? Okay. Not seeing anything. I'll go ahead and move on. Oh, I'm sorry. Preservation, competitive scoring preservation. Okay, so there's we'll be going through some of the change areas in the later parts have been unchanged, but we'll go through preservation scoring regarding like risk of expiration, tenant impact, etc. So we'll go through each slide. This is just the chart that shows the breakdown of those scores.
We have a question that just came in about for projects that may serve a population that is more specific than typical coordinated entry placement, does the project need to use coordinated entry to qualify for PSH operating resources, or can it use an alternate referral process? I think that might be one that we need to take back to our FAQ question, because that's specifically about PSH, and our PSH analyst is not on this call.
Yeah.
There will definitely be a response in the posted FAQ.
Thank you for the question, Blair.
Okay. So preservation projects competitive scoring updates. The tenant survey required for these categories will be vulnerable tenant displacement. You want to make sure that you submit that information into the self-score tab of the Excel NOFA application. Extremely low income based off of currently serving aggregate. Enter information into self-score tab of the Excel NOFA application. Rent assisted units. Make sure to enter information in rents and incomes tab, and the tenant protections and voucher utilization. Enter that information into the self-score tab of the Excel NOFA application. Location, need, severity broken up into three categories: severe rent burden and mismatched housing stock will be auto-populated. The third category is disaster areas disaster areas are self-scored and will be confirmed. You can review the policy at the link below. Resident services plan is a threshold item, and it will be used to score this category. Recall that resident service plan is about services tailored to residents. For federal preferences, serving lowest incomes, lowest average rents based on tenant survey and average of income of current tenants calculated in Excel NOFA application. General federal subsidy, all the elements are required documentation, tenant ownership, historic value, and PHA wait list marketing, which would be commitment from PHA. Just as with the new construction and acquisition rehab, all 4 points for federal leverage will go towards home. Financial viability, development pro forma review, operating pro forma review, readiness to proceed, confirmed funding, pending funding commitment, demonstrated abilities to start within 12 months, project schedule, which is adequate and reasonable, and explanation of project funding required. I see there's a question.
Yes, question. Regarding preservation criteria, how should projects document a pending prepayment request with RD if it has not yet been approved?
Angela, can I tag you for this?
Say that question one more time. I'm sorry.
Regarding preservation criteria, how should projects document a pending prepayment request with RD if it has not yet been approved?
We would take anything that was submitted to RD or a letter specifying where you're at in the process. We understand that they can be hard to get a hold of.
Great.
Okay.
MWESB is to be completed in the Excel NOFA application. Development team experience should be documented in the narratives tab of the Excel NOFA application and completion of the supplemental in the work center. Performance, again, is split into 2 categories: portfolio compliance and portfolio viability. Same requirements as new construction, acquisition, rehab. Performance criteria is only applicable to applicants with projects in OHCS portfolio. Should additional information be considered in the scoring, it can be detailed under the narratives tab in the Excel NOFA application. And again, if the applicant does not have a project in OHCS portfolio, please submit a letter attesting to compliance and financial good standing. Right now we have competitive scoring tips. Do not assume that the reader is familiar with your organization or in your narrative responses. Reviewers may not have access to your complete application. Even if you're repeating answers, it's likely for a reason. Explain acronyms. Double check that reference attached materials are in fact uploaded as supplemental or supporting evidence. Assumptions are standard across various sections of the application. For required documentation, we require the Excel NOFA application, supplementals. Each program has a supplemental form and or Excel tabs, except for gap resources. You must complete and submit forms for all funding programs requested. For supporting documentation, you want that to demonstrate application details and includes the following: organizational documents, development team capacity questionnaire, resident services plan, description, zoning form, site control form, and the tenant relocation plan and tenant survey forms. For evidence, you want to include the memorandum of understandings, also known as MOUs, letters of interest, proof of project-based assistance, and be sure to review the NOFA for specifics on those. So we have just final reminders, important dates that are coming up. Pre-applications are due September 22nd. The full application is due October 27th at 4 p.m. Please prepare for any potential errors when submitting, so submit early. because it cuts off right at 4 p.m. All questions should be sent to the MF NOFA inbox by October 20th, and those FAQs will be updated weekly or bi-weekly and posted online. You should be seeing the FAQs posted shortly, likely this week. Reference materials are posted online and links are available on slide 19. The instructions tab, be sure to follow it. It has all the information and red flag cells of the Excel NOFA applications. This process is competitive and submissions are final.
So we have a couple questions. So the NOFA asks and scores applications based on a summary of the general contractor's profile and team member demographics. If the project intends to solicit or confirm the GC after award, how should proposers respond to this criteria and how will it be scored?
We'll get back to you in the FAQ for that one.
Yeah, we're going to need to circle back with the FAQ team. And then is there a cutoff time for pre-applications? 4 p.m., 11:59 p.m. on the 22nd?
Hold on one second. It would be end of day, so 11:59 p.m.
Okay. Next question, is a market study required? The NOFA indicates a review of rents and required variance to market. If no market study is required, how will that be evaluated?
Might tag Angela in for this answer.
Sure. Yeah. So the market study is not required until you have confirmation of resources to help reduce the barrier for application. What we do review is our internal portfolio of rents, and this is part of the reason we're having a cursory financial review, is to get clarification if things are looking way outside of what we would expect to see.
Okay. Is there a way to be notified when new FAQs are posted? So there's two ways that we post our FAQs. We post them on the website. We also, if you have a work center, we will publish them to the work center as well.
All right, that was it. So if you guys have any more questions, feel free to submit those in the chat. Thank you. All right, that was my cat.
Do we have to use the real estate schedule of holdings template from the OHCS website for the pre-app, or can we use our own template?
We require using the template.
Sorry, Jackie, I can't write as fast. I didn't want you to cut off. It was my understanding if we include all the items from your template, we could use our template. That's what we've been using the last couple NOFAs.
Yeah, I believe that now. Oh, I'll let Angela answer.
Yeah, we just had too much discrepancy in allowing folks to use their own templates, so we're implementing having to use ours.
Thanks.
So Blair, for the bill, there's another question, and I will answer this one myself since I did it. For the building permits timeline disclosures, has this been vetted with jurisdictions, Portland in particular, and when will a sample of this form be available? This is not a form that is filled out by the jurisdictions. This is a form that you have your architect certify when the building permits will be done. There is no jurisdiction. We are not requiring the jurisdiction to fill this form out.
Is that related, Travis, is your question relating to the building permits timeline disclosure?
I
It
believe
is,
that-
yeah. I think we'd want to let our architects know as soon as possible.
So if it was part of the LIFT NOFA this year, so that's we can get you one. We can publish one on the website. It's
Yeah,
a very
and
nice form.
it'll also be in the work center.
Yeah.
It'll be uploaded to the work center as well. Okay, okay, now we have questions coming in.
The special needs target mentions several populations, but not specifically identify SPMI. Does this meet the target criteria?
Oh, yes, it does.
When submitting the checklist with the pre-app application, is it still expected that the supporting documents, which are typically too large to email, will follow later through the Procorum portal?
Yes, we can, yes, that would be the case.
I appreciate everybody writing down their questions so that I can copy and paste them. Thank you for your assistance in this.
Yes. Not sure if anybody else is typing up more questions. Oh, I see one.
Sorry if I missed this. I dropped off for a second. Is it critical to have a GC on board at this point? This is actually somebody answered a question similar to this, and we have to get back to you with an FAQ team member. So we'll get back to you on that, James. It'll be published in the actual FAQs. Next question. Is there an application process for a basis boost request, or is a project awarded a basis boost as it meets? Are we able to know if we are approved for a basis boost prior to submitting the 9% LIHTC application?
So it's not, it would be included in the LIHTC supplemental form. You would designate that you intend to have the basis boost. It would not be an approval prior to application submission.
Okay. You may have covered this already, but I missed it while writing notes. But for project-based criteria, scoring at project-based subsidy criteria and scoring, does a request to OHCS PSH operating subsidy, rent assistance, or Metro SHS subsidy count for these points?
Yes.
Yes. For the TOD basis boost, if a jurisdiction doesn't call it TOD, but has completed comprehensive zoning changes relative to higher density in transit areas, would that qualify?
Darren, I might have to circle back to you on that one. Any other questions?
Don't forget, we have the MF NOFA inbox that's open for questions. We have an internal group that meets weekly to go over the questions so that we can source answers and publish them after that. For the right of first refusal condition, is there an expectation of how much below market the ROFR purchase price is? The way the NOFA document is worded, $1 below market would qualify, although this is likely not the intent. If this condition impacts LIHTC pricing, how will OHCS consider this in the context of requests for other gap funding? I think that's a FAQ circle back question.
It's not. We
Oh,
wouldn't. So right of first refusal is a programmatic code requirement that specifies a certain number of variables be reduced from as a basis for the exchange upon exit of the investor. So it would be incumbent upon the applicant to understand that code requirement, again, listed at section 42 I-7, and we would not consider it in the context of any other funding requests because it is a programmatic requirement on the investor.
Any more questions? Otherwise, hey everyone, I'm not seeing any more questions come in, so thank you so much. If you do have questions that have not been answered or that you weren't able to ask during this webinar, you can submit it through the MF NOFA inbox. The email address has been added to the chat by Becky, and thank you for joining us. Thank you all.